This is Jason Anderson, Chairman of the Killing Town Council, and I am calling this regular Town Council meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, July 12th, 2022, and it is currently 7 p.m. For attendance purposes, for roll call purposes, all council members are in attendance, and I am jumping ahead in the order. I'm operating off the special agenda, the special meeting agenda. Mr. Wood, if you would.
Heavenly Father, we again seek your wisdom and your guidance, that you would clear our minds of all distractions, that we would be able to focus solely on the work that you have us here for. We pray also for unity. We pray this in your holy and precious name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we've already done roll call, so we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is 5, adoption minutes of previous meetings. Can I get a motion to adopt 5A, meetings from special town council, minutes from special town council meeting June 6, 2022, and 5B, minutes from regular town council meeting June 14, 2022.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Wood, seconded by Ms. George. Discussion or corrections on these minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 6, presentations, proclamations, and declarations. And we have none. Moving on further on in the agenda, item 7, unfinished business for town meeting action, and we have none, so we'll move on to item 8, citizen statements and petitions. Ms. Calorio, can you go over any we had submitted?
We had 2 submitted online. The first one is from Deborah Hallback, 353 Snake Meadow Road in Danielson, and she was writing in support of the Wyndham 4-H's dam request through ARPA funds. The second one that was submitted was Andrew Lunier from 43 Red Oak Drive in concerns around traffic on Green Hollow Road since the resurfacing, and a request to require trucks to not utilize that road.
Thank you. If anyone here would like to make public comment, please step up to the podium, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Teresa Lacasse. I am from 953 North Main Street, and I think I sent an email to most of you, so I don't want to go on ad nauseum about it, but we're having a severe noise problem. It started, I don't know if they moved in 2 or 3 years ago when that house was sold, but it's getting pretty severe, and I understand that there are no laws maybe that prohibit them from setting off incendiary devices, but if they're going to be setting off incendiary devices that are shaking my house and the house behind me, I don't think they're setting off something legal. They can tell you all they want, whoever went there, the police officer I called, but we've got a problem. Number one, we don't seem to have enough police officers to be looking at that problem over there, because there's also traffic in and out of this house day and night. Some days there's 30 cars that come in and out of that driveway. The kids, which are teenagers, are doing something under the porch. Packages are being passed back and forth between these people. The parents do not care. I have spoken to them about it. When these people moved in, I was friendly. I greeted them. It's a nice neighborhood. When the first booms and packages and things started happening, I talked to them like any neighbor would and said, hi, can you let me know when you're going to be making these very loud noises and help us out here? I said, I have post-traumatic stress. It really frightens me when you're setting off these bomb devices. My animals, I have one with seizures. They said, oh yeah, we'll let you know. And promptly the next week they had a graduation, set off all kinds of fireworks and loud noises, and the lady came over saying, I'm sorry, we'll let you know. Well, they're just not letting us know. They don't care. They now go out in their yard after this July 4th incident at 6 p.m. I mean, how could it be fireworks? Fireworks are done at night in the dark. At 6 p.m., a loud bomb sound shook my house, Sue's house behind us. People came running out of the doors thinking, has a terrorist attack occurred? This was not just a cherry bomb or a piece of tannerite. My suspicion is it was some sort of dynamite because they were up there. It was too late by then. They were in the driveway giggling and having their fit. But they actually mock us now. When I come out with my dogs, they'll actually try and make loud noises to see if it will scare my dog. We walk our dog, we go out the front door. He's, giving me the, finger when he goes by on his motorcycle, which he now also goes, making decibels that shatter your ears. So I don't know how to approach these people. If none of this is illegal, and when I call the police, they tell me, well, there's a burglary. Okay, I'm sorry you're having a burglary. I get it. We don't have other officers from anywhere they can call in to check out things that sound like dynamite in our neighborhood. Dynamite can't possibly be legal. I don't know what to do. They also said to me, well, the drug task force has been disassembled, so we can't help you. Here's my number. If you see any suspicious activity, make sure you send it to us. I'm like, I don't have a solution to this, but I can't live next door to bombs, drug dealings, motorcycles that spit rocks across the road, practically hitting my yard because he's angry that, I dared to say, could you let us know when you make the noise? We'll leave. We'll go in our camper and we'll go back to Nickerson Park and we'll stay there for the night. They can't even do that. They just, whenever they want, do whatever they want, and they do not seem to care that the rest of the neighborhood is disturbed. I know we can't legislate morality, but we have to do something. They can't continue to shake people's houses so that they think there's a terrorist attack occurring, or that I don't even know what to say at this point in time. I've done everything I can do. I can keep calling the police. I think they're tired of hearing from me, but it's disturbing. It shouldn't be happening. People should be kind to each other, and I realize you can't fix that, but I don't know what we can do, but I'm just letting you know I'm sick of it. Not your fault. Thanks.
Thank you.
Lynn LaBerge, 28 East Franklin Street. I saw an article in the paper the other day that the town manager is going to suggest to the fiscal subcommittee about using some of the ARPA money for radios and for a Lucas machine for our local volunteer fire departments. And I would encourage the fiscal subcommittee to approve that, to forward that to the town council, and that the town council would approve the spending of these funds for our volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Nancy Grindelsky, 877 Upper Maple Street, Dayville. I want to comment on how my husband was singled out by Norm Farren at a previous town council meeting for his inappropriate behavior at a Board of Ed meeting. Why didn't Norm identify all the other folks speaking out? And obviously, the council and the Board of Ed collaborated on this because there's a lawyer here, too. None of the town council members spoke to Ed before they blindsided him publicly at this meeting. There's a pattern of slandering Democrats by this town council. I remember when Jason Alexander wanted to become a member of the Permanent Building Committee. Jason went after him. I couldn't believe it. He was so cruel to that man. And Lori Zornato wasn't treated that well either. I remember Norm being very disrespectful to Sue Lannon at a Board of Ed meeting, too. I remember texting her and saying, I'm so sorry for how you were treated. That kind of talk gives women trauma, especially women that have had trauma. And the people that you guys have put down are valuable members of this community. Ed's been on the town council for 10.5 years. He has never been treated this way by anybody. He's a smart, kind, good-hearted man. And he's the only town councilor that has spoke in favor of the student-based health clinic. None of you have. And I think that's the big problem. Let's vilify him. You know, it's like a bully. All of you guys ganging up on him, put him down. It's just unbelievable. Ed is not always, he's not, let's face it, he's not a member of this committee. You guys don't share with him things that are going on. I remember we planned a weekend event one time, and you guys had scheduled a meeting, and nobody, oh, well, by the way, Ed, we got this thing going on. Oh, well, sorry, we were busy. Ed's really passionate about the student-based health clinic, and I don't think you guys doing these kinds of activities are gonna change the way he feels. He's been on the council and shown how much he cares about the families more than his own agenda. He must be doing something right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Last call for public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is 9, council and staff comments. Ms. Calorio, the complaints made regarding noise, would our noise ordinances come into play in that?
So our zoning enforcement officer, who also is the designee with regards to our noise ordinance, has been evaluating the situation. I've asked him to, let's relook at what those decibels are, and maybe we bring that back to the ordinance subcommittee. But within the timeframes that they're happening, or that they've been reported at happening at this point, it is falling within the allowable timeframes. So I've asked our law enforcement to give me backup with regards to the additional, with regards to the history of complaints, so that way I can get a better understanding as to whether or not they are outside of our noise ordinance window, which is, I believe, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. until Sunday. Sundays has a different window. So I've asked for that information to be able to better analyze that and determine if there is a violation. But again, so we're evaluating that to see if there is a violation with regards to that. At this point, my understanding is that there's not a noise ordinance violation.
Just off the top of your head, do you know what the maximum decibel level is allowable during the day?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Just going by experience, to create anything that's gonna shake something across the road, especially if you're talking about shaking a house behind a house across Route 12, you're gonna be exceeding,
Right, so you have to
easily be exceeding 140, 150 decibels.
understand, and it has to be consistent. So that's one of the wordings within our ordinance, is it's a consistent noise. So persistent and consistent, what does that mean? So it's a matter of interpretation and what that means, what's deemed consistent, because you have construction equipment that would exceed those levels as well, that are happening on a sporadic basis, right? You have people that are using chainsaws or doing other lawn equipment that may exceed on a short-term basis. And that's what I've asked our zoning enforcement officer to take a look at within our noise ordinance, to determine, does something like that need to be changed, and and I'm working with our legal team to determine enforceability. Because ultimately, it comes down to enforceability, right? If we're not there when it's happening, how do you enforce it, right? And my CEO is not on, he's not on call, and he's not on staff late at night. It's law enforcement and Troop D. They are the ones that assign the cases under our resident state trooper contract. It is assigned under Troop D, and it's a matter of what is available for law enforcement response. So, those are all things that I need to evaluate in this.
My understanding was construction equipment is exempt from,
I'd have to,
construction activities
it
are
can be,
exempt
yes.
during the day.
right, but I need to get through the full noise ordinance, because there is other pieces that,
I believe
could-
there was something at night, you couldn't exceed a certain threshold,
Correct.
even if it was an instantaneous.
after the 10 or 11 o'clock at night, correct. So I have not had an opportunity to pull the noise ordinance today.
Okay.
I was out of the office for most of today, but I have had a conversation with our zoning enforcement officer.
Okay.
Do we have anything for like a nuisance type noise behavior? Like, this seems to fall under almost harassment of the neighbors.
We don't, that would be something that would be
different.
managed through law enforcement with regards to a civil complaint.
Okay, thank you.
That would be harassment, you know, a harassment complaint with a civil matter, that would be handled through law enforcement.
My issue with that scenario is, we're told by law enforcement. Oh, okay, thank you. We're told by law enforcement, if you see something, say something. So this is in a series of things that I have issues with, either the dispatch or Troop D. Like she said, she called law enforcement, they said a burglary is more important. We have constables here. We are paying for community policing. Something's wrong. On Father's Day, Cook Hill Road, these people's house burned down almost a year ago. It's being burglarized. The neighbors call in. Dispatch says, oh, you're a third party, you don't count. Mary's aware of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pulling into my driveway last week, and there's a commotion just below my driveway. There's people flagging in the road and whatnot. And the person flagging, they would call 911 without a blink. So I'm not paying too much attention, minding my own business. I go out 15 minutes later, no police, no nothing. I call town hall. Was it called in? I call Troop D or the dispatch. They don't know nothing of it because I'm calling in something entirely different. Well, it turns out to be somebody hit a deer. Well, okay, that's not, nobody got hurt, so it wasn't an issue. The people in the road doing what they were doing was a bigger issue to society than anything else. Again, why are we paying for constables if they're not getting dispatched to where they're supposed to be? If we're supplementing the state police for what they have to do, I have a big problem with that. And in regard to that burglary, our constable was what? Not even a mile away that Sunday morning. So either they don't know what they're doing over at the dispatch, or I don't know what to say, but I had to, and then when I got this email, when they called the police, and we have a burglary. Well, we have constables. They could have got there, listened to the noise at whatever time it's gonna be. So yeah, they know, they'll shut it off if somebody sees the cops coming, oh, there's nothing going on. So law enforcement is not doing squat for a situation like this, unless they just happen to be there at the right time.
And that's the downfall, is a situation like that where in order to charge someone for a crime, you gotta catch them committing it or have enough evidence, and if it's a noise complaint, the evidence is pretty much gone at that point.
If I can
that's-
speak to with regards to the dispatching
Yep.
component. So the incident with regards to Cook Hill, Mr. Grandowski and I have had a long conversation around that, and I will tell you that we've had conversations with Troop D around the response to that and how inappropriate that response was. And they're well aware of that there was a breakdown with regards to that. That being said, one of the evaluations that I want to do with regards to the noise complaint and the lack of them dispatching somebody quickly, I need to better understand where our constables are being dispatched to, because I will say our own constables are managing a third of the calls out of Troop D for the entire town. They're managing over 1,000 calls a month. So, which means they're not just sitting in an office waiting and never being dispatched. They're out on calls all the time. The question is, were they out and dispatched on a call when these calls came in, and were they unavailable to be removed from that? And if they weren't, if they were tied up on a call, why was there not an available state trooper, Troop D, which is what the response is supposed to be out of Troop D, to back that up? Because again, we don't have a full complement of municipal
Right.
police force. We have a very small police force that we're growing over this time period. So they're not gonna be able to cover every single call. And it would be unrealistic for them to do that. But that's an evaluation that I'm doing with our law enforcement officers to better understand if there's a gap with regards to, is there an issue with Troop D's dispatch? And how do we resolve that?
And then-
Because ultimately, that's not the town's, we don't have control over Troop D's dispatch. But how do we effectuate a better response?
But we have the constables, and we're paying a big hunk of change for the constables. And the last time when I was knocking on doors, the last election cycle, somebody talked to me and they said, well, aren't the constables for community policing? I said, yeah, that was the idea way back when, but I guess Troop D and company, they look at it a little bit differently. But, you know, they have some issues that they would like to talk to the community policing constables, because when they call Troop D doesn't want to hear it. But when you call to try to get a hold of a constable, you cannot get a hold of a constable. So somehow we've got to change something that, you know, even if it's not an emergent situation, but it's something that they would like to talk to the constable about, because there was something situation with the neighbor they were worried about, whatnot, safety of the individuals, and someone should be on notice about it. And they were very frustrated. And I thought that was a one-shot deal, but I'm seeing a few other things, and, you know, we have state police, we have constables. I'm looking at it more on the, yeah, the constable, but then you go out and I see 3 constables and 3 state police on a traffic stop. It's kind of, you know.
And maybe they needed to have that many at that
Yes.
traffic stop. You don't know
I
the
don't know,
situation.
I'm just, right, I'm just.
Right, and I think that's one of the easy knee-jerk responses is when you see, just like with our highway garage, our highway department, right? Somebody drives by and in that literally split 5-second minute, they see a guy standing with a shovel and they make the presumption that all our highway does is stand there with a shovel looking in a hole all day, right? And that's not the case,
Oh,
right? And so that's unfair to make that broad presumption that because there's 3 of our constables and 3 state troopers at a traffic stop, that it's unwarranted.
Well, I'm just, but in some of these other instances, when, I think we've got to do a better issue with, if someone wants to talk about community policing, and maybe we've got to have an ordinance to spell this out, I don't know how that should go. But if we can't call the town hall or somehow to get,
Right.
it would be a nice,
So
a little
when
different
peop-
avenue somehow, that non-emergency information, how would we get that to our
So
constables?
they can leave messages for our constables at Troop D. They can absolutely do that. They have mailboxes there, they have voicemail boxes there that they access on a regular basis, and people can leave messages at Troop D for our constable, for a constable. They can say,
then
I want to leave a message for
Okay.
one of the Killingly officers, here you go, and they will get it into one of the Killingly officers' boxes, right? So that can happen. The reason why we discourage that people, the public, from calling the town hall to leave a message for our law enforcement is because we have no recording mechanism to record a complaint or to record a situation that then gets put into the actual call logs. That's what the dispatch is for. That's why we pay an administrative fee with regards to our resident state trooper contract, is that is one of the services that our resident state troop, that we're paying for, is for them to be able to have an ongoing log. So that way when we have an individual that comes forward and says, I've called 7 times, there are logs for that at Troop D. I can get a log to say, how many times has this person called? I can't get that from here at the town hall. We don't have those mechanisms in place for that. We don't have the systems in place for that. And so that's why it's important for people, when they have a complaint, regardless of what it is, they call Troop D. And if they want to leave a message, if it's not an emergent matter and they want to leave a message for a constable, they ask for leaving a message with the constable, but that call is recorded in
Okay, well,
the
that's- yeah,
logs.
all
And
right,
that's
that's-
important
yeah,
for that
yeah.
to happen,
Yep.
because then Troop D has the availability, should they have to then investigate, they can then go back and pull logs to see what has been the history on this. Where if somebody's just coming to the town hall, you know, I don't have those systems in place for a formal log to be created. And that's what we pay for with our resident state trooper contract. We're paying the state to provide those administrative services.
But, okay, that's because whatever happened in that instance is where they wanted to get information to the constable. What was relayed to me was
Sure.
Troop D could have cared less. So with what you're saying about a message, I'll have to impress upon. Matter of fact, I'm gonna talk to him and say, you've gotta leave a message. You, as Joe citizen, have to tell Joe state cop, do your job, I want a message to our constables. And
Leave a
that's what-
message.
We have to be a little more emphatic. Trouble is, most people don't wanna be that way. They're trying to be, they got a situation and they don't want it to get out of hand, but they want someone else to know about it. So when they get shot down by a authority figure,
And all the more reason why they should be calling Troop D and leaving a message or reporting it as a formal complaint, whether it's an emergency or not at that moment, if they're concerned about making sure that somebody in a law enforcement role has understanding and knowledge that this situation is occurring, they should be leaving that message with Troop D, because whether it's a constable that's responding or whether it's a state trooper that's responding, clearly they feel that there's a law enforcement, reason for law enforcement to know this information and potentially have to respond. And while they may not think it's an emergent nature at the moment, if they describe it to the law enforcement may decide that it is an emergent nature. You know, that's why they should be calling Troop D.
So I had an issue. I went up to Troop D. I requested somebody to come down to the house. They responded pretty quickly. And just to let you know, sometimes it works. But for you, ma'am, I feel your pain, and I can tell you one thing, that the town zoning officer will greatly help you out. Absolutely. And another thought, Ring cameras.
Audio.
Right? And there's a little thing on there, you could program it when something's happened and it says, hello, you are being recorded. There you go. But good luck, 'cause it's. Good luck.
As someone who has actually worked inside of a police department with 2 officers on and a sergeant on, so you have 3 officers essentially available, I can definitely understand a little bit where the dispatchers are coming from. I can definitely understand your concerns as well. I'm not dismissing by any means. You know, if I had gotten a phone call that I have an active burglary in progress, and then I get a phone call for, hey, I locked myself out of my car, the burglary is going to take precedent over that. Obviously, we don't forget about those calls, and we really do want to send people out and try to help people. But you know, I do remember that, and I have 3 officers now. So if I have 5 incidents going on that all require police, it becomes what is the most important thing right now that has to happen. And that's part of triaging. As someone who works emergency services, I understand the whole concept of triaging and understanding what's the highest priority first and working our way down. And sometimes we get a lot of high priority calls all of a sudden at once. And we don't forget about those lower priority, if you will, lower priority. And I don't mean to dismiss there. That's just, I'm sorry, I'm using the lingo. But it's hard to just say that, you know, our constables aren't doing anything when they're I know those guys are the first up on every call in the town of Killingly.
well, it's not the constable, I don't have nothing
Yeah.
against the
Yeah.
constables. Look,
But and I can definitely understand your frustration with
Yes.
I can understand your
How do you
frustration
do
with the
that?
dispatcher too. You know, I've called before and had some issues, so I can definitely respect where you're coming from, Mr. Grindelsky. I just wanted to give a little bit more of that perspective from that behind the desk, understanding what's going on. If I only have so many officers, there's only so much I can do before I'm like, I'm sorry, it's going to be delayed. You know, that's an unfortunate thing, and I think it's a great argument for. We really need more officers there, both on the state police end, on the municipal end, and it's not just the town of Killingly, it's every single town is struggling. The state police are struggling. We really need to give a lot more support to these guys and do what we can to, while being fiscally responsible, also take in, improve our law enforcement by providing more officers. So that way there, when we are getting the noise complaint while burglary is going off, I have an officer to that's not tied up, let me send them to you. So I just kind of want to, I don't disagree with anything you said, Mr. Grandelsky. I just wanted to give that little bit of a different perspective there. I have it. That's why I can speak to it.
But getting back to the Cook Hill incident, you know, where, because the third party, somebody needs some training. I think there's another factor that across the board, training is lacking. And I think, you know, when we're looking at our constable is more of a community police force. You know, community policing, they gotta get engaged in a different route sometimes. And that's why the guys that call me, it was Troop D, could have cared about our situation. So now when you say, leave a message to get a hold of one of our constables, because it's not a high priority, but it's something I think you should know. But it's hard to pass that on. You know, how do we, maybe if someone's watching it out there in TV land, that's kind of where I'm going with this. If you see something and say something and you get shot down, you know where that's going? You're never gonna open your mouth again.
Well, and yeah.
To a point.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%. I can tell you, I've had people who refuse to give their name, they were like, I'm just telling you this is going on, click, and that's
Oh,
it.
no, you gotta-
And
you gotta-
unfortunately, they didn't want to give any further information, and you know, you're sitting behind that desk now very frustrated because you're like, I want to be able to help, but you just hung up on me. And so you're trying to call them back or trying to get a hold of them, and now a 911 call comes in, and I can tell you it's
Oh, no, it's a tough situation.
it's a tough job, and I don't disagree with the need for training. There's always need for training in every facet of the world, if you will, not just emergency services, everything. But like I said, I just wanted to give a little bit different perspective there because I've lived it.
Thank you. One last thing I would just like to clarify on a couple things that Ms. Grandelsky had mentioned. As far as having the attorney here for that meeting, that was done because I was questioned as to whether council members were allowed to speak and if there was anything that the council had control over of council members' actions outside of a town council meeting. And I wanted the attorney here just to clarify that when council members are at a meeting that is not a board or commission that's appointed by the council, we have the right to free speech. I just wanted the council members here to clarify, the attorney here to clarify that, and also speak to what we should watch out for when we are before boards and commissions where we have appointed them. That way, we don't overstep our bounds. That was my reasoning for having the attorney here, just to give us all clarification. In regards to the notification or alleged lack of notification on that weekend meeting, I had already provided in a public comment several months ago, and with documentation and my text message log that showed that I had notified all the council members at the same time regarding that meeting. That is, I have a habit of doing that, and I a lot of times intentionally inform Mr. Grandelsky first before I inform the other council members. And I have nothing further on that. Any other comments?
I do. I have a comment for Nancy Grandelsky. I was in no way colluding with the Board of Education, and that was, you're accusing the whole town council of colluding with the Board of Education. I had no part of that, and I'm sure there's other people who haven't. And I had no idea why Norm Farren was going to address. So you're accusing people without having the proper information.
Thank you.
I have something to say. Also aligned with Ula, I've never been rude to your husband. I've always been very respectful of Ed, And as far as Lori Zornato, I was very instrumental, and I'm not saying I swayed a vote, but I encouraged her to be put on the Parks and Rec. And I had a very nice conversation with her. So she was not treated unfairly here. And she's on the board.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is 10A, appointments to boards and commissions. Dave Griffiths is seeking reappointment to Northeast Department District of Health.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Grandelsky, seconded by Ms. George. Comments, discussion?
Mr. Griffiths has been on that board for a long time. I think he might be currently chair of that.
Yes, he has
Yeah,
been.
so he's
He's been chair for several.
been on quite a while. I'd like to see him continue.
Thank you. I know he has served this town and volunteered a lot of his time over a lot of years, and I am thankful for that. I'm thankful for everyone who donates their time, volunteers their time to help the community.
As a former member of this particular board, their meeting times are in the middle of the afternoon, so it's not an easy position to fill. And Killenly does have a spot and an alternate, as well as the borough has a spot and an alternate. So, I mean, Killenly has some pretty good representation. So, and you know, Dave understands, you know, the environment and the importance of keeping, you know, everything healthy. So, the health department does a phenomenal job with the budget that they have.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none. Actually, I will clarify one thing. His term does expire July 18, 2022. The new term would run for 3 years and expire July 18th of 2025. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is 11A, report from the Board of Ed liaison, who is not here this evening. So we'll move on to 11B, Borough Council liaison. Ms. LeBert.
Good evening. At our public hearing last month, we discussed the allocation of our ARPA funds, and the projects we decided to fund are a fire truck purchase, the town's placemaking project, sidewalk repair on Dyer Street, website and audio-visual package for the borough, which I know Michelle has been asking about, so we are going to work on that, and money towards the Wyndham Tallinn 4-H camp. With that, from my understanding is you can't pay for the dam, but you can take and reimburse them for funds that they lost because of COVID. So that's what we're going to be doing. And we will have a little bit of money left over, and once these are done, if there's, if that's there and any extra, then we will look into funding other requests that we had received. So at a regular meeting, Heidi and Brenda had met with Jill St. Clair and reminded her that the borough does have $30,000 in facade money that is available. So with the new projects going on, if any business is looking to do the outside of their building, that they can approach us for that. And they also met with Mary to discuss where the town is going to be repaving roads in the borough and the streets and where sidewalk work would be necessary. And originally it was going to be Reynolds Street, and now we decided not to do that. Looks like Dyer Street will be the next one that will be done. And there's 3 proposals that we were presented with, so we're going to discuss that at our next meeting. One was just to do the driveway aprons, because with the newer cars, everybody's scraping when they're coming in and out of their driveways. One is to do a replacement up to where the state installed sidewalks are, or to do a full replacement. So that we won't have our next meeting until September. So we'll know, I can tell you then. We're looking at doing a schedule for our sidewalk grinding and set it up like a capital project with a 5-year projection. And the New England Museum of Firefighting Correspondents contacted us about donating our 1984 Maxim hose tender, and we have agreed to do so. And there will be an agreement between us and them that if they ever fold or close, that they will contact the Danielson Fire Department again to see if we want the truck returned. And this is something standard that I've done with the Historical Society in places. And in September, we will be holding a strategic planning session, and this include branding and marketing, ways to get the public more engaged with us, and how to be more proactive. And that's my report. Any questions?
I do have one. How much money did you allocate for the 4-H dam?
I don't have it broken down, or I can go back through my paperwork and find out. No.
I can find that out, and when it comes to the fiscal subcommittee, I can bring that information.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a note.
I just wanted to say great work. I'm so happy to see all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is 12A, discussion and acceptance of monthly budget reports, summary report on general fund appropriations for town government. Can I get a motion to accept this?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made by Mr. Woods, seconded by Mr. Cottula. Discussion. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is 12B, discussion and acceptance of monthly budget reports, system object based on adjusted budget for the Board of Education. Can I get a motion to accept this?
So moved.
Motion is made by Mr. Wood,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr. Cottula. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on in the agenda to item 13A, correspondence, communications, and reports, the town manager's report. Ms. Gloria, if you could.
Yes, so I've included the most recent COVID information. They have stopped publishing the number of hospitalization counts, but I think it's largely because those counts have diminished so significantly, so I did not include those, but I did include the case counts as well as the vaccination statuses. There's a new program that Connecticut has rolled out with the use of some of their ARP funding, and that is the My Home CT program. It can provide property tax relief to eligible residents, and it provides more than just property tax relief. It can provide relief with regards to mortgages and water, sewer, all of those components. It's for homeowners that have been impacted by COVID-19, and it's to really prevent those properties from going into a foreclosure status. It's not administered by locally, it's administered by the state, but we are trying to assist the state in getting the information out to our community. So the flyers are on our website. Our revenue office is aware of them, and they are letting people know about the program as well. So if they encounter a property owner that is struggling with paying their property taxes or indicates that they're having a hard time with their mortgage, they are making sure that they get that information and gives them the link to contact the state that will help them walk through how to do that application process. So we're trying to get that information out. I am going to have it also put up on our Facebook page as well to try and further broaden that information. So completely managed by the state, but just trying to get that information out. We are holding a Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day on July 30th, so this is a great opportunity, a couple of weeks ahead of time. Plan one of these weekends to go through your sheds, your basements, garages, and start collecting all of that unused hazardous waste and bring it to this one will be held at KIS, at KISS. It's really a drive-through. You pack everything up in your vehicle, drive in, you don't even get out of your vehicle. They will, you just have to bring proof of residency, and they will take everything out of your vehicle and put it in the correct location. So, it's a very efficient, service that they do, and we just want to make sure everyone is aware that I did include the flyer for that, so it does outline, you know, all of the type of things that you can bring to this household hazardous waste day, and also some of the things that you know, what not to bring. So you can't bring compressed gas cylinders and different other things. So goes through those, and it's very limited what you really shouldn't bring, but it really goes through, really gets your brain going on what could be potentially in your garage or stuff that you really shouldn't be throwing in the trash. Don't throw it in the trash. Bring it to the household hazardous waste. It's free. You don't have to pay to dispose of it. It's a great opportunity there. Lastly, I just wanted to give you the final, you know, we've done the final transition on the WPCA operations. It has transitioned fully to staff operated at this point. We are in full compliance. The transition went well. Suez worked very well, Veolia worked very well with us on that transition. And so we are up and running. Our software, everything is, all the infrastructure is working well. So we're completely town run at this point. And I listed the meetings that I attended. The NECOG special meeting that I attended with Connecticut Deep, it was with Katie Dykes. And that was really around solid waste disposal and the current crisis that we're going to be facing with the Hartford plant closing because of its inability to continue to operate. So they were looking at alternatives for facilities around food waste diversion programs for either commercial composting locations or anaerobic digestion locations and communities that may be willing to host that type of facility. But just trying to get a better understanding of what challenges there may be in more rural locations around our waste stream disposals. So it was a very good conversation with the commissioner, but that's essentially what that special meeting was with the Connecticut Deep.
On the Household Hazardous Waste Day, I never get a negative comment about that. That is one positive. It's almost like whatever it costs, they don't even ask that question. It never comes up in conversation.
Yeah, so that's budgeted for in our solid waste fund, and typically our annual, typically the household hazardous waste, we usually do it about every 2 years. And depending on what's disposed of in a given year, it all depends on what comes in, but it can range anywhere between $10,000 and $25,000 on for a day for one of these events. And again, that really depends on volume of what comes in.
But everybody is, now they're used to it. They're starting to save it and throw it in this process versus throw it down the catch basin. And then we're stuck MS4. I don't know how that's coming along now. If we start doing studies, that's when it would show up down the road. And the food digestion, I was watching I forget what entity it was. They had a forum about it, and it's big, big money. We're going to be trucking trash way out to the Midwest. The Mirror plant, that one there, they never raised their rates in so many years, so they kept their rates the same, and they should have been raising them, so there's no money to get that facility going. There's nobody wants to do anything with that, so when that goes away, I don't know where they're gonna put everything else. And Lisbon and Preston, they're getting kind of old. But getting back to this food waste, they want the towns to handle the cost. Unless there's an incentive, there was one of the senators, he's the first selectman in Old Saybrook, and he's a state senator. And he says, well, as the town-wide, I don't want any more mandates from the state, but as the senator's side, we've got to give an incentive to get this moving along. So, there's some small little programs, but the transportation issues associated with that are just almost cost prohibitive.
Yeah, the conversation that we had with Katie Dykes was around really the state partnering with a developer, but really looking for a community that would be willing to engage in helping land a developer for an anaerobic digestion or for a commercial composting. But again, developer is really gonna look for high concentration of large amounts of clean food
Clean,
waste.
yes.
It's not just, residential food waste is a lot more challenging than, commercial or grocery store food waste that may go out because it's handled in a more temperature-controlled environment for a longer period of time, right? So there's very different, and it depends on what the end use is of the end product will drive on what they can do. So, so that was the conversation with really, it wasn't so much the towns necessarily taking burden around that, but it was trying to find, if whether or not there were towns that were interested in partnering with the state and a developer to pursue that. I know Coventry they have an anaerobic digester that's now functioning in Coventry. But again, it's about density of, how far the material has to travel in a truck to get to the digester.
Well, it's kind of tough, because when we were trying to have the town-wide collection, and I caught a lot of heat with a lot of different, number of people. They have their one dumpster, they don't recycle, that's it, everything goes into the dumpster. So that's a problem right there. And then with even the recyclables, we're paying $75 a ton at the transfer station, where prior to it, it was zero. But you look to all the entities that are using the products, it's all contaminated with single stream. We did a super disservice when we went to single stream, when everybody was separating the glass, the plastic, the newspaper. That was it, and there was a market for it. Then single stream, it all went to China, now that's no longer there. So, a clean product is the key. And
I remember when we got revenue off of recycling.
Yeah.
We used to get paid
Yes,
for our
yes,
recycling. I remember when we
yes.
had a revenue for that.
So it's,
Long
I don't know
gone.
how it's an education process to try to get that back out, and how do you do that? All these forums that I was kind of watching, it was like, we got to get to the kids in the schools. The parents are set in their ways, but the kids will kind of embarrass them at the right time to force.
But there's also, one of the challenges around going back to moving away from single stream recycling is also on the hauling side, right?
Yes.
So single stream recycling is easier for a hauler to dispose of because it takes less manpower, and they're dealing with just grabbing a container and dumping, right? But then you do end up with a high amount of contamination with regards to glass, because the glass breaks when it gets into the truck, when it crushes, and then it's all in, you can't separate that out at that point in time. So you have to fix the hauling perspective of it, and the challenges around changing that, and the manpower associated with that, and all of that. So it's multi-dimensional on how we change that waste stream, and how do we divert some of it out of the waste stream, which then goes into how do you get manufacturers to lessen the packaging material that would lessen our waste streams to begin with. So there's a coalition at the state level that we've been participating in, our town engineer and I have been participating in trying to help maybe effectuate some of those changes or legislation that would force changes on the manufacturing side for packaging. But it's a complex problem.
As far as revenue from the fabric dumpster at the town,
It's minimal.
well, okay.
It's very minimal.
But at least that's taking something out of the waste stream.
It does.
They set themselves up, they came to us, or however, it was interesting, it was, well, we want a clean product, again, emphasize clean product, so that's,
Right.
we need more people like that have a
Right, but we've run into problems with that one because it's the same one that's located at our library. And again, while it says on it fabric and clothing, people insist on putting in children's toys and, dropping furniture off at it. And, all of those things that don't belong there. And we end up ultimately having to pay to dispose of that because we have to pick it up and haul it to the transfer station and get rid of it. Right, it happens with all of them. And so that's, again, about, us as consumers making sure that we're actually disposing of it in the correct manner. If the bin says clothing only, you should only be putting clothing in it, right? It's not well, if I put my kids' toys on the side of it, it makes me feel good because I'm not throwing it out, right? It's a feel-good thing. I'm not throwing it out, but in effect, it does have to get thrown out because nobody's picking those off of the sides of these these bins, and that's why you see a lot of them around town end up getting closed off and wrapped up because they're becoming people's feel-good dumpsters.
So, with you saying that, is it worth us having those dumpsters, or is it?
So we haven't had a huge, it hasn't outweighed the benefit. But if it becomes a problem where it is outweighing the benefit, we'll pull it from the library parking lot and only leave it at the transfer station. The transfer station doesn't happen as much because we have people there to be able to say,
Right.
that doesn't go there.
Right.
Get rid of it. They have the ability to do that. You can't do that at the library.
No.
So if it becomes a problem at the library, we will pull it because we're not gonna have a trash heap in our
No, we
library
can't have
parking
that,
lot.
but so we're trying to do something, and people are spoiling it for us.
Mary, are they doing better about emptying that on a more regular basis? Because I know I've been through a few times. I've gone down there myself and looked at it and said, no, I'll keep it in my trunk until they come and empty it.
Yeah, so when our library staff usually is really good about letting us know when it's full, because sometimes it seems to be like certain weekends. I don't know, like a lot of people either do a bunch of closet cleaning out, or there's a bunch of people that move all at the same time, and you have a bunch of stuff to get rid of, and they do fill up fast. I mean, so our library staff usually lets us know pretty quickly, and we let the company know, and they're pretty good about responding on a fairly quick basis to get out here and empty it. We haven't had an issue with that as of yet, but again, that's something we always monitor.
One other thing, when you were talking about the hazardous waste collection deck, you had said unused hazardous waste. Now, looking at some of the stuff in here.
You can use used or unused.
Okay,
It doesn't
all right,
matter.
That just.
I didn't mean to say
okay.
unused, but
Okay.
so it is unused in the fact that you still have product left, right? So whether you have like, an inch and a half of, weed killer in the bottom of the container, that needs to go to household hazardous waste. You don't throw that in your trash. But don't bring empty containers,
Okay.
right? So an empty container of weed killer doesn't come to household hazardous waste.
No, I was just thinking like the transmission fluid, the waste fuels, the
Oh, yeah,
kerosene,
yeah.
the gasoline.
Those are gonna be used.
Even,
Well, obviously.
because I have one thing at home that I was gonna bring is mineral spirits. That
Yes.
it's technically used, but is back in the original can.
Of course, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. So yes, used or depending on the product, right? Used or unused.
And
any
ideally,
of
you
those
want it in the
products.
original can, that way it's easier for the town to identify what it is and handle it properly.
Absolutely,
correct?
but that being said, if you have it in, if you have gasoline, in a container, you just bring it in, right? If you can, hopefully you can identify it. There are occasions that we get, people are cleaning out grandma's basement, and sometimes you don't know what that tin container is.
Yep.
Right? And they bring it in. That's okay. You bring it in. So we figure that out.
In regards to that, I know the last time I went there, I had helped out somebody whose husband had recently passed there, and I brought some old paint, and that individual had decided to store some of that old paint in peanut butter jars and things like that, whatever was lying around for that, and they took it. So I have to say, that was my first time going a couple of years ago, and it was a very positive experience. I actually enjoyed even seeing our town engineer. When he saw me, he said, well, I know how you know about this, and I don't have to ask if you live in this town. So, but, as Mr. Grindelski has already said there, I strongly encourage anybody that's able to make it out 9 to 1 on July 30th to do it. This is a great opportunity to do this, and I got some stuff I've been looking forward to this day for the last 2 years.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is 13B, NECOG fiscal year 2023 work plan and budget summary.
This is just communication, so this is what was approved by NECOG for their budget and their work plan summary, so this is just for your information.
Any questions, comments from council? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, 13C, Board of Education memo regarding non-lapsing fund. Ms. Gloria, if you could go over this.
Yes, so this is just, again, communications to the town council. The Board of Education made a motion and authorized the superintendent to draft the memo to request an increase in their, the cap for the non-lapsing, and then also a transfer that would max out that potential new cap. The items that they listed for what they approved for projects at their June 22nd meeting, the total value of those is $341,000. This item is typically taken up by the town council sometime in November or December, after we have gotten largely through the audit, so we have audited numbers that the council can consider. And that's typically when it comes for an action item for the council's consideration. So at this point, it's communications to the council.
Thank you.
That being said, the council could take it up at any point in time, but that's the historical view.
Just one question, something that's listed on this. The gas line project for KHS and KCS.
Yes.
I know there was an issue with the crossing of 395. Has that been resolved yet?
To my knowledge, I don't know that they've actually gotten the permitting yet from DOT, but my understanding is, so the Board of Ed had previously approved an amount not to exceed 100,000. My understanding is that the costs are now exceeding that. And so that request is, I believe, 70 or 90,000, I think, is the new request as well to add to that project in addition. But it sounds like that project is I believe that they're in the final stages of getting those approvals, because the Board of Ed is planning for pad installations and things like that. So I think that they're well underway with being able to get through those approvals.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, so there, to complete the gas line, is only to hook up to the building, right, to supply the boilers and whatnot?
They have to do a conversion in the boilers.
Correct.
So they have to do the conversion in the boilers, and I believe they have to do a cement pad for where the meter is gonna be.
They're not responsible for any of the hookup other than to the.
Correct, in the building.
Eversource even bought the line going up to school.
For
correct?
KHS,
For
yes.
KHS.
Not for KCS, but for KHS,
KHS.
yes. Yeah, we did complete that gas easement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on the agenda. Next item up is 14, unfinished business for town council action, and we have none, so we'll move on to 15A, new business. Consideration and action on a recommendation authorizing the town manager to execute a tower cell site lease agreement with Dish Wireless LLC for use of the 79 Putnam Pike cell tower. Can I get a motion to adopt this?
I'll make that motion.
Motion has been made by Mr. Catula, seconded by Ms. Barclay. Ms. Colorio, could you go over this, please?
Yes, so this would be a new tenant on our cell tower. This has been before the fiscal subcommittee, and they have recommended it for approval to the town council. This new lease would generate annually a little over $31,000 for the first 5 years. At each 5-year renewal period, that rent amount would increase by 3%. This is a good value to the town. It's very comparable and in line with what we're receiving for rents from the other tenants on that pole. So I will say that I've seen it looks like Dish is really looking to expand out their network here. I've seen a number of approvals through the siting council for other sites around Killingly. So typically, the town's pole tends to be one of those main linking components for their cell network. This has been evaluated by legal and fully evaluated by our insurance carrier as well with regards to our insurance component. And we feel this is a very fair and equitable, really a very positive lease for the town.
Thank you. This did come before fiscal subcommittee as well, and it did get recommended for approval to the full council. Mr. Brandowski.
Where on the tower are they with, because we got multiple entities on the tower.
Yeah, so they are towards the lower part of it. It actually states in the lease at what height, and I want to say they're, if you're looking at the, there's like a gap. If you look at the actual tower itself, trying to see if I can find the picture of the tower. So their lease space is listed on,
Well, maybe my question is, they're on the bottom, but how do all the entities access the tower? They have to climb it?
yeah, through the center.
Okay, so they wouldn't interfere with any,
No, they're not, they cannot interfere with any, so they are at a radiation center of 140 feet. That's where their station is gonna be. That's tower space, that's on page 3. Indicates where their tower space is, and that's currently open space on our existing tower. So we have, this will make our 4th tenant on the tower. Our equipment is at the top of the tower. So all of the entities access their equipment, they basically go through the center of the tower to get to their individual locations, because they're on the exterior portions of the tower.
because I saw one tower, we were working a job, and I'm watching, and they're climbing over everybody else's equipment. It was, I'd say, no way would I want anything like that. It was just,
Yeah.
but that thing was so old, I don't know.
And we've had no issues with our
But if they're
existing
going through the
tenants.
center, if there's an
Right.
access point
There is.
through, see, these guys were climbing on the outside, they were
No.
bringing stuff up with ropes.
Right. So, and there were, all of our tenants, so T-Mobile is at the very top of our, and we just recently approved the T-Mobile lease, right? T-Mobile is at the very top of our tower. They're right underneath us because they bought out the original company that constructed the tower, right? So they're at the very top with us. They've just recently redone all of their wireless points up there. And there's two below them, and there's never been an interference or a disruption or damage to anybody's equipment on that tower. None of them want their equipment damaged, so they're very mindful of the other equipment on the tower. Because they know if they damage it, they gotta replace it.
How much space do we have on there? Usable space?
Usable space, I believe this will use up the remaining,
Well,
the
yeah.
remaining space. I don't believe that we have much more available space on there. I think this is our last real open space, if you will, on the tower. I could be wrong, there may be one more kind of layer that can be put in, but I think this is kind of pretty close to the end of it.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none? All those in favor? Actually, do we have a motion yet?
You do.
Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on the agenda to item 15B of new business. Consideration and action on a resolution authorizing the salary adjustments for non-union employees and management staff for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Can I get a motion to adopt this?
So moved.
Motion has been made by Mr. Wood, second by Ms. Wakefield. Ms. Gloria, could you go over this, please?
Sure, so this is our annual request that we bring forward to the town council, with regards to the non-union employees and management staff for their annual wage increase. We incorporate, a percentage and allocate it within our contingency budget every year within the budget process, but we don't reflect it within the individual budget because the council needs to take action on that in order for it to, take place. So my request is a 2.5%. One of our units has a 2.5%, the other unit is a 3%. Our town hall unit is a 2.25%. My request is 2.5%. That, I think will keep our non-union staff closer to, market, and is more reflective of at least some acknowledgement towards the, high rate of inflation that has occurred over the last year. I will say that I've completed the performance reviews, and I think that our non-union staff has contributed a lot to the functionality of our town. This is not just our department heads, but this is our library staff, our full-time and part-time library staff, as well as our why is my brain failing me at the moment? Sorry. Executive assistant within my office, and all of our department heads. So that's, largely, and law enforcement. So that's largely what it is. The average increase is right around $2,000 per employee. Some are less, obviously, if they're only part-time and but that's the average increase. So my request and recommendation is for approval of this. Again, it was contemplated within the contingency budget that you approved for the budget, for this current fiscal year's budget.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
If I will, this was reviewed by Personnel Subcommittee at the Personnel Subcommittee, and it was recommended unanimously for approval to the Town Council.
Thank you.
A procedural question to understand. So we get penalized sometime for contingency, taken from contingency, but not this.
Correct. So this is within your so we have a contingency budget within our operating budget. Where you run into problems with regards to our credit rating agencies is when you do mid-year appropriations from your fund balance, not your contingency. This is planned upon and budgeted for. Yeah. Good question.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is 16, council member reports and comments. Mr. Grandelsky, would you like to start?
Conservation Commission, they are trying to get the Girl Scouts to help them build, not a bridge, but a walkway over a wet area on the Litchfield Avenue conservation area along the Quinnebog River. And there's some interpretation that, I guess at first the Girl Scouts were gonna pay for it, and I don't know if the town's gonna pay for the material, and, but that's in the works. And they're looking at doing a Walktober event, wherever that might be. And then they were, doing some money, but they didn't get a bill from the Board of Ed for the bus tours. So they're on the verge of overextend. I don't know if they talked to you about where their budget was, because that was supposed to come up. That they were supposed to talk to you how close they were. And I said, you can't exceed your budget. You gotta be, and it was the end of the year, so it was getting close.
Yeah, so I will say when it comes to billings from the Board of Education with regards to bus usage, that typically doesn't come until the end of the year or sometimes just after the end of the year. So I'll have to check with finance and find out if we've received the bill from the Board of Education with regards to the bus tour and evaluate, kind of what the impact is on their budget. But
Well,
I
that's
think
they were
they
looking-
still had room within their budget
Well,
to be able to absorb that.
they wanted to make sure
but-
they covered that, and then there was something, I can't remember what else they were looking to do, and it was like, it was gonna exceed, and
It's,
I,
the year is over with, so they don't get to do it now.
well, this was a couple of weeks
I
ago.
know, but it's over with now, so
So-
I'll have to, but, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't receive a purchase order for that, so, I can evaluate with
yeah, I
that
said,
with them and
let's- they
figure
said-
out what the.
Yeah, they said they should come up to your office and
Sure.
let's see what the financial scenario.
I'll check with my
is.
staff, because my staff usually, the staff usually evaluates that and tracks the budget for all of the boards and commissions. So I'll check with, Anne Marie and, Allison
But that
and
was the
figure out what the
key,
issue
that was
is.
the key, that they didn't get the bill from the Board of Ed. Well, does that go on next year's? Well,
No, it doesn't.
yeah.
It doesn't matter when it's billed, it's matter when the service was performed.
Okay, so that's.
it
I
would
was
go into
kinda-
last year's budget.
Right, I said, we can't overextend, let's do within the right scenario. That's it.
Mr. Whitehead? Ms. Murphy?
Agriculture was canceled, and the water pollution one I was a liaison for. They welcomed their new member, Donald Aubrey. Jen said they're under budget for their revenues, but she believes they're going to hit their target. Joe Katir is the acting PM. Veolia was demobilizing at the time, but they're good now. It's totally done. Frito-Lay came and gave a presentation. They said when they're totally up to speed, it's going to increase the flow by 10%. They're going to break ground in the spring. Dave Cappuccioni spoke about the Buck Street project, which is in progress. They laid, at that time, about 80 feet of line. He said it was going to be in progress for approximately 60 days. A lot about staffing, but they were about, they had a class 3, a class 2, a class 1, and they were looking for OITs and their grade 4 to take over as PM. One of their pump stations is failing. Both pumps are failing, and they're going to get new pumps for that, through their own funding, $47,000. Morin Street, there was an issue with a resident where some catch basin work was done, and the guy's pipe collapsed, so he wants the sewer department to pay. It was determined that it's kind of impossible to tell whether we caused it or not, but it will ultimately go to the highway department and not to the sewer department. And they're going to get $2,000 worth of nitrogen credits, so that's good. Refund from the state.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Wood?
Items 15A and B were discussed already, so that was really my report. The only other thing I'd say, and I know I'm a little out of turn on this one, is I think our ordinance subcommittee might need to revisit our noise ordinance.
Mr. Ctula?
Once again, I did meet with the fiscal for the lease on the cell tower. The permanent building committee met, and we met with Mary, the town manager, Mary Brahm, had Bob Angeli, and a liaison from the Board of Ed, Kyle Naparata, and Antonazzi and Downs Construction was there, and going over the list of possible items that could be reduced to stay within budget. And that's a fluid list, because if money's saved in one area, then they can add stuff back in, but there'll be nothing that's going to be removed that's going to affect any safety aspects of the building at all. I'd like to thank the Killing Parks and Rec for the red, white, and blue. That was a good event. I think it was well attended. I don't know if I've seen that many people there, and it went off very well. And the KBA for the second Saturdays. I stopped in there for a while, and I don't know if Jill would want me to say this, but I even saw Jill St. Clair emptying trash cans when she was over there. So everybody jumps in and does what it takes to get it done.
Thank you. I attended the Personnel and Fiscal Subcommittee meetings, and the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission meeting last night was canceled due to lack of a quorum.
I attended conservation. Ed gave that report, and then Kevin talked about what's going on with the Board of Ed. So, and their lawsuit is still ongoing, and they will not be back until the end of the summer.
Thank you. Ms. Wakefield?
All right. You were wondering what the borough gave. Fortunately, I'm on the borough council too. So I actually wrote down the amount. Like Lynn said, it was for revenue losses. They allocated 10,000 towards their revenue losses, which seems like quite a bit, but I was just there this past Sunday helping them with their day camp check-in because they needed an extra nurse, and I'm kind of a sucker when it comes to Heather. But they're back. That all the everybody's still driving and signing, getting checked in via their cars. They still have to do their COVID swabs. But then there are 10 kids in a cabin, so it's like, I thought to myself, this kind of defeats the, but anyways. But that's, so the borough, which was actually rather surprised they approved money, because Access Agency was requesting funds, as was NDDH, and they turned them both down to give money to the 4-H camp. So when they were going over their numbers, I tried to just kind of stay off to the side. And so I was like, oh. So I was pleasantly surprised about that. We did have EDC last week. We started off a little late in order to get a quorum, because lots of people were on vacation. We started probably almost 20 minutes late. The trust fund, the EDC trust fund, has just over 300,000 in it. Visit CT, their slogan's "Find Your Vibe." We're listed under Mystic Country, and we're called the Scenic Northeast. And I guess there's some kind of position for a town rep. Jill, I guess, is for the town rep for Scotland. Is that where? Canterbury. So if anybody's interested in for the tourism and that, there's a board, a state board, I think it is.
Yeah, there's a Eastern Regional Board for Tourism Board that we can have a liaison.
So if anybody wants to get involved with tourism, that's, it could be a very interesting one. They talked a little bit about Second Saturdays, and the food truck event, which is the Saturday after the second Saturday event in August. They talked a little bit about the ARP funding that we approved for the Parkway, Alexander Parkway, as well as the Brickyard. They have a Yukon intern that's working with them to try to set up our cultural district. Brownsfield assessments, and there's some help coming from Yukon for that. I guess what happens is a lot of projects get started and then they stop and they do stuff, and then you got to redo the Brownsfield, and which is why, when people wonder why it takes so long to get stuff accomplished, and that's what happens is you start, you run out of money, you stop, and then they change the rules, and then you got to start all over again. So there is a National Endowment of the Arts grant program. It's Our Town, Arts, Town History. I guess we were awarded one of those for I think that's what they had said. It was basically from when Mr. O'Leary had brought over the first family from Laos, and he sponsored the first family, and then they sponsored other families, and we actually have a probably the largest Laotian population in the state is up here in this northeast corner, which is kind of weird because you don't think of the cold northeast as supporting people from Laos, but they've done well, and you know they melded in with the rest of the Greeks and the Irish and the French Canadians that are up here. So the Historic Society and the library are going to be working on that as well as part of our town. And then there's community investment funds. They're looking to, I guess it's a state program over the next 5 or 6 years that are going to work towards the larger capital projects like brownfields and stuff like that. So supposedly Jill was saying something that Killen is listed as a distressed community under that, so which I thought was strange because I didn't think we were a distressed community anymore, but.
We can be acknowledged as a stressed municipality for 5 years after losing the designation, so we're still within that window.
Oh, okay. Oh, well then we qualify.
Just one question regarding Parks and Rec, and Ms. Colorio, maybe you can weigh in on this. So with the cancellation of bike night, due to the lack of volunteers and one of the big donors backing out, my understanding was there was money left in the account for bike night from previous years. And what exactly is that money, where's that money gonna go? And where'd the money that's in there come from? Was it from the entry fee? Was it from donors?
Isn't that managed by the Bike Night Committee?
No, it's
isn't it?
managed by the town.
Oh, is it?
It's all
Okay.
managed by the town. So, it is all, gate funding that was residual, that was the KRPD portion over the years that had not been necessarily utilized. That will be potentially repurposed into seed money for a subsequent year event as they plan what that next event might look like, or used for, I do know that our fireworks next year, the costs for those are going to be doubling. So we're going to be looking at fireworks. Our current year's fireworks was $15,000. If we maintain the same show for next year, we're looking at potentially $30,000 for that. So I don't have the balance off the top of my head as to what that is, so I would need to have the reconciliation on that finalized, and I can report on that on a subsequent meeting, but so I don't have that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I was just
to give
wondering
you that, but
where the funds had come from. If it
yeah,
was
it's residual. It's gate funds.
Gate funds.
Yeah,
Okay.
from it, not necessarily residual donation funds.
Okay.
And any donation funds that we received for this year, we have reached out to those sponsors to ask them how they want to proceed with their donation, if they want to receive a refund or if they want to put it towards a future event. By and large, many have just said to put it to a future event.
Okay.
So they're very supportive of community event.
All right. Thank
I
you.
have
for
a
that.
question on that as well. There's a lot of a lot of things flying around about the bike night. So how much were we short money-wise, dollar-wise?
So
Just curious.
typically, we are looking for sponsorship to be somewhere between 17 to 20,000. We were only at 8,600, which is really substantially short. And at this point is where we would need to start making a lot of financial commitments in order to be able to proceed with that. Being that short on funding, I don't feel comfortable making financial commitments. As well as for volunteers, we typically are looking for about 60 volunteers for the night. We only had about 22. It's a large gap in volunteers. And this event takes, it's a different engagement with volunteers than some of our other events that we're looking for people to just necessarily sit at a booth or, monitor a simple pedestrian entrance. this takes a fair amount of investment by the volunteer and upfront training, so you can't just look to have a whole bunch come on board a week ahead of time. You really need a lot more time to prepare a volunteer base for this type of event. It is a higher risk event in the fact that it's happening along the evening time period, which goes from, you know, daytime into dusk and into dark by the end of the night, and you are really pushing your pedestrian traffic off of sidewalks and into an actively used roadway where motorcycles are actively driving in the same space as pedestrians. It's a higher risk area and event.
So is that something that we need to address earlier next year?
Honestly, we're probably looking at contemplating the event. I don't know that we're not looking at necessarily hosting another bike night in the same vein at all. We're probably gonna be looking at coming up with a new event.
Is that because of lack? Because you look on Facebook and it seems like hundreds upon hundreds of people are making comments that are disappointed, and I'm just curious.
I will say that from I've seen a lot of those comments on Facebook. Our recreation department has only received a very small handful of people that have reached out to the recreation department. I've had one phone call here at the town hall reaching out about volunteerism. So we've had no public comments with regards to that. This all is tied into the lack of volunteerism, which we've seen been declining over the last several years. Last year, we only ended up with 30 volunteers, substantially short than what we were looking for volunteers, and we were very fortunate that we had a scaled back event because of the weather. We had a lot of people that didn't attend because of weather last year, and we were fortunate in that respect. We're recognizing that this event requires a lot of resource investment, that maybe we can do something differently that wouldn't require as heavy of a commitment of financial resources by the community in order to be able to have a family-friendly event for the community. So there's a number of aspects to this besides, you know, just necessarily the financial and just necessarily volunteers. But I've seen a lot of those comments, and you know, we don't have an outpouring of people at either the recreation department or the town hall with that. So
I will add, I know when you stop and you think that it's a 4-hour event, that we're looking at about $20,000 for 4 hours. That's a lot of money. I know back in the early 2000s, when we still had Frostival, we eventually put that to bed. As much as that was a fun event that everybody enjoyed, when we finally canceled that, we were up to $25,000 for a couple hours. So, you know, sometimes you have to weigh. I mean, I love bike night. I really have enjoyed going to the bike nights, but at some point you got to look at the costs. And I almost wonder if maybe if we had a fixed location rather than on a street, you know, like a big. I remember once before they had everybody in where Planet Fitness was. They had a big old car cruise before everything redeveloped there. If there was some kind of a location that we could use, that would be something where you wouldn't have to worry about pedestrians and car traffic.
So I will say that our recreation staff is actively looking at, actively trying to develop a new community engagement, a new community event that would provide better public safety components and provide a better family-friendly environment for people to engage in. So they're actively trying to pull a new event together.
Oh, and the rec commission meeting is the 25th of this month, so if anybody's interested, it's held at the community center.
On the tourism panel, who has to apply for that? Any town?
Any Killingly resident.
It's just like a board of commission.
It's just like any other liaison, like the NDDH liaison. It's the same process.
So what's lacking a person down there? They can't advocate for any funds or to move activities?
So Jill is a very loud advocate. I will say that. So Jill is on their executive board, and while she is the Canterbury representative, she loudly advocates for Killingly as well. But that being said, it would be great to have a Killingly representative specifically on the panel, but Killingly, Jill advocates very, very loudly.
Because everywhere, just like you're saying, no inland wetlands, we didn't have a quorum. How are we, like, WPCA was right at quorum level, and now we're one over. I don't know where the WPCA is, if that's where
I'll get everyone a new updated list of where we are with boards and commissions.
We gotta solicit people somehow, because it's tough to do business.
Ms. Barclay?
The fiscal subcommittee was already reported on. The Housing Authority meeting was canceled from the Planning and Zoning meeting on June 20th. They had the election of officers. Keith Thurlow is the chair, Brian Card vice chair, and Vitica Lawrence will be the secretary. They had a public hearing for the Jolly Commons LLC, 120 Warregan Road for excavation and removal of gravel. The public hearing was closed and it was approved with conditions. The creation of cannabis establishments, they established the regulations for that. They will be, it was approved and they'll be effective on July 18th. The state determined that each municipality had to come up with their own regulations, and without these regulations, cannabis establishments, people could apply for cannabis establishments under different, what would I say?
So they would be considered as though, treated just as any other retail or any other agricultural business. So they would be basically allowed almost anywhere in town. So by having our own zoning regulations, we have specific requirements around what zone they can be located in. And also we identify the 500 feet requirement that they have to be away from parks, schools, daycares.
No, it's up to 1,500.
No, I think it's 500.
They
Did they change it to 1,500?
They
The zoning?
They
commission
said
changed it to 1,500?
they will determine, and it can be up to 1,500.
Okay. I didn't see that in their change on the zoning
Yeah.
regulations, but so we've been able to add all of those components within the zoning regulations. So that way, you can't just have somebody, because otherwise they get treated just like any retail, or just like any agriculture, which can be in our residential, which could be in, any of those locations, so.
Okay. So therefore, the moratorium on cannabis establishments will end on July 18th. So that public hearing was closed. Dayville Four Corners LLC, applying for liquor, beer, and wine sales. Special permit, the state of Connecticut was allowing Killingly for one new permit, and they already had a permit application. So this is the second one, and this will be continued on the July 18th meeting. And Melting Point LLC on Warregan Road. That public hearing was closed, and it was also approved with conditions. And new business for the next meeting, the Planning and Zoning will come up with bylaws. If they the meeting usually ends at 10. If they want to extend to 11, they would like to have notification by 9:45. And if the meeting isn't finished at 11 p.m., they'll be pushed to the next meeting. There's a public hearing on opting out of accessory dwelling units for state statutes. A public hearing on the business park warehouse distribution, and also other business would be the 5 Mile River overlay.
Thank you.
And that's it.
The second liquor license application, do they have a location or just filing for an application?
That second liquor license, they would like to be in the plaza where Aldi's is, where, what is that, Halloween
The
store?
Halloween store.
Halloween.
Yes.
Okay.
So it would not be an automatic, they wouldn't be an automatic,
Approval?
approval, so the town doesn't have the availability of issuing an additional license. It would be, should another license become available, they're looking at it from a marketing standpoint, to be able to market that for a future tenant. So there's not a tenant that would be going in, so there's not another liquor store that would be going in at this point in time, but they're looking at it from a marketing
Okay.
perspective to be able to.
They're looking for a more permanent. They're looking for a more permanent tenant
Right.
rather than.
And that would give them greater flexibility if it had the approval or the ability to receive a liquor license, should one become available within the town.
Okay.
And we've had a couple of liquor stores that have closed and then,
Right, but we just had the one open up right
Yeah.
here in downtown.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. Executive session, we have nothing for executive session. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Wood, seconded by Mr. Grandelski. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? This meeting is adjourned.